Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the MACS podcast. My name is Steve Schaeber. I'm the Manager of Service Training for MACS, the Mobile Air Climate Systems Association, and I'm joined, as usual, by my partner in crime, our President and COO, Peter Coll. Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon. Haven't seen you in a while.
No, I've been out on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Just got back from a nice long trip into, well, we call it upstate New York. It's really just, I guess when you're
Over
outside
the
of the
bridge,
city,
right.
Yeah, you're upstate, right?
Right.
So,
But before that, you were in Kansas City.
right,
You were in New Orleans.
right, Louisiana. Yep, was down there for the TMC show.
So you did Vision,
Vision first.
and then you went down to the TMC show,
Yep,
and you played around in New Orleans.
yep.
Right? Did you make any money in New Orleans?
I hope so. I hope we had a lot of good activity with our members in their booths at the trade show.
Okay.
But I think really what's most important about TMC is just interacting with those truck fleets.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a relatively large segment of our membership. That, you know, a lot of people, they think of MACS as 609 for the car guys.
Yep.
They forget that, I mean, we have a lot of brothers and sisters that work in trucking.
Yep.
That service truck air conditioning systems, and you know, we go down and we provide the service information that they need, and of course 609 training and you know, just regular AC service training. So
So speaking of training, we got a lot of training going on. We had MACS training in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
yes,
Right? We had MACS training in, I'm not sure where Bob was. Where was Bob?
so Bob did training for us in Skippack, PA, and up in Hazleton,
Okay.
so up in the Scranton area.
Right.
And then we also had classes out in West Virginia. We had classes in Lancaster, like you said. And we have a couple classes coming up in New York City.
Right. And we've got a big Saturday class.
Yes. So I'll pull that up real quick on our website. We did a short little promo video. Thank you, Alexa, for your hard work on this promo video for Jerry Lemon. So Jerry's going to be in town. He's actually teaching in Lancaster for us.
Stop for a second. What's with the t-shirt, dude?
Well, hey, look, I mean,
Okay, I'm just saying, look,
Yeah.
Jerry looks like he works for us, and you look like you're just jumping out of the sleeper cab.
yeah, well, it was, I need a headshot now, so I didn't think it was going to be like all of me.
Okay.
I mean, like a headshot?
All right.
So, yeah, so we made this promo video for our mobile AC boot camp, our heavy duty AC boot camp, which is going to be this weekend. It's Friday and Saturday. And we've done these for years, actually. It's kind of an interesting concept where we do a Friday afternoon 609 certification class. And then Saturday, when we have a little more time, we try to get things rolling here about 8 o'clock in the morning, and then start class at 9 a.m. with lecture class.
Gotcha.
And this year we kind of lucked out. So we're going to be getting a dump truck from a friend of ours at a local electric contractor. And I don't know what piece of equipment yet. I'm hoping for like a mini excavator or a skid steer, but I want to get some kind of a construction machine that we can bring into the shop. And then do, of course, a recovery machine demonstration and show leak detection tools and stuff like
So
that.
you're bringing a dump truck into the shop?
Well, the dump truck is going to be parked out back because our doors are not tall enough.
So, just note to Steve, we do have
Yes.
some overhead wires when they come
Right.
in, so in case whatever trailer they're bringing in. But that's awesome. So you get a little hands-on, because hands-on
That's the most important part.
is something that people really, really like.
Yeah.
We have the ability to do a lot of stuff in the shop, not just the classroom.
Right.
Because we have the facility for that. So hands-on is something that people really like. They get to touch and feel and so forth. And we want to look to try to do more hands-on as we go into the future. But we have another class coming. One of our member partners, Dorman, is coming in on Wednesday the 17th in the evening. They're
Right.
going to put on I think Josh Weaver's going to do an air conditioning class. And we're expanding. You don't even know this yet. I didn't tell you. I haven't seen you in a while.
New information.
New information.
Right.
So we have actually booked, and this doesn't apply to our air conditioning folks, but we actually have Kohler. Kohler, the company that makes generators.
Right.
They have actually booked the MACS facility the first week of November.
Oh, cool.
To do hands-on training for their service folks here at MACS on Kohler generators.
Generator service.
Generator
Man,
service.
we're training on all kinds of stuff.
You want to teach underwater basket weaving? We got you covered right here.
Right.
All you got to do, we got a facility for you. Come on in, bring your stuff, do some yoga, whatever works for you. But MACS is a wonderful training facility, and we're going to make sure everybody gets to use it.
Right. Yeah, and to that point, I mean, so we have Dorman, who's local here, just over in Colmar, using our facility. And of course, we also partner with our local association, MACA, the Mid-Atlantic Auto Care Alliance.
Yep, they have their monthly meetings here, and they teach ADAS or whatever the topic of the month is, whatever
we
it might be.
had advanced engine performance not too long ago, so all kinds of non-air conditioning stuff. But, you know, still serving our members, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. Because those folks who service air conditioning also service other things.
Right.
So we can't be a full service partner and teach everything ourselves, but we can facilitate getting other folks to teach you the other parts of your business, which are important.
Right. And inadvertently, whenever we have classes like this, you know, there's always an air conditioning question that comes up anyway.
Exactly.
Right. So we're here to help facilitate that and answer the questions.
Can you go to our 609 page?
Sure.
Would you jump over to our 609 page? Because we do have a special 609 event coming. I think it's in training.
Oh, it's under live training events?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
yeah, lots of 609 certifications.
Yep. So we've got the boot camp. We've got a 609. We just did one today. We're doing one on the 13th. But so we have 16th. We've got 609 in Spanish on the 18th.
Right.
The webinar.
Right.
I think Agnes Perez from Puerto Rico is helping us out with that.
Right.
Yep. And keep going because we're still in April. And
April
then
24th.
On the 24th, we have what we call 609 Day.
Right.
We are doing, I think it's 4, scroll down, is it 4 or 5?
Looks like one at 7 a.m., one at 9 a.m., 12, and 3.
Right, because you don't know what you don't know. And we've always said, hey, you know what, we're having these on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. and we find out that, look, if you're in the Midwest, Tuesday night at 6 p.m., that's bowling night.
Right.
You don't miss bowling night for anything. Or, you know, kids got baseball practice or whatever. So we said, let's just do a Saturday. We'll start at 7 a.m. We know it's real early for our West Coast friends, but we'll start at 7 a.m. and we'll do 4 different, repeating essentially the same class 4 different times in the same day.
Right. To hit the different time zones and to try to offer it at times of the day when people can be available to attend the class.
Right, exactly.
Because it's always something that's tough.
Yep.
You know, we schedule something for 10 a.m. Eastern, and it's 7 o'clock in California.
Right.
It's even earlier in Hawaii and Alaska.
Right.
So, and then like you said, 6 p.m., it's pretty late for
I don't know.
I
don't know if you're logged in or not, but let's just try this. Click the view event details on one of those. There you go. I think it's $55. Yep, it's $55 for the webinar and the test.
Right, includes the test and the webinar. Right.
Right, and anyway, that's what we have going on the 24th.
So let's get down to the business of today's podcast.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'd like to do is just go over a couple of topics that I actually presented in part during my short presentation at TST's big event this
Which
past
I
weekend.
heard was 60% longer than it was supposed to be.
It was. I was allotted 10 minutes and took 16. But I had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't control the audience wants to know stuff. So.
Yeah.
But I basically touched on 3 topics briefly. One of them, which was future refrigerants.
Yep.
One of them was some SNAP applications for some refrigerants that we may see being used in the future. And one of them was kind of a continuation of something we've been talking about for a couple years now, and that's cylinder regulations.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess briefly the description that I gave to the group was, you know, a couple years ago, EPA wrote a rule which actually went through and became finalized that said, you know, we're gonna stop using virgin cylinders, the
Disposable
new
cylinders.
disposable cylinders of refrigerant, and we're going to switch over to returnables. You know, kind of like what we do with propane for our barbecue grills.
Or like the commercial guys do, except the commercial guys have been using the same disposables, but they put their extracted refrigerant into returnables, and then they send that back. They don't recycle it.
They don't recycle it.
Right.
Right. Well, that rule was challenged in court, and it was dismissed. It was thrown out. That part of the rule was returned to EPA. So now they have a new rule, or they have a new proposed rule.
Correct, a new proposed rule. Yeah,
so.
And that's it was creative on their part. First of all, it's important for us to say that we are huge supporters of the hard work that the EPA does, and we know that a lot of people give the EPA a rough time, but I can tell you from my personal experience here at MACS and prior to being here at MACS that we have the ear of the EPA.
Yeah.
We really do.
And we have a good relationship with them.
They are our partners here, and some things have come up, and we've said, hey, we don't understand why you're doing this. Doesn't seem like the right decision. And then they'll take that input, and they're like, yeah, you know what, we're gonna go a different direction here. Right. So they are willing to work with us, but they got creative. And they said, okay, if we're not allowed to regulate the container that the refrigerant goes into, we can regulate what happens to the refrigerant in the container that you're using today.
Right.
And essentially, they have said you can no longer take your 30-pounder of 134A or your 10-pounder of YF, if you're using those two, assuming you are, and when it's empty, punch a hole in it and send it off to your local metal scrapper. Can't do that. You need to take that cylinder and you need to send it back to an EPA authorized reclaimer to have the remaining heel of the cylinder, that little bit that's left over in the bottom.
Small amount that's left when you can't take any more out.
And how much is that small amount?
Someone asked me that. I said 5 grams, but I think
50 grams.
50 grams. Okay, I was wrong.
About 50 grams. Just under 2 ounces. About average is about 50 grams in a 30-pounder. About 50 grams. But to get that 50 grams out. Now, again, with all due respect to our friends at the EPA, what we question is, I'm going to have that cylinder here, and my scrap metal guy comes by once a month to pick up my scrap metal from whatever it is, the scrap exhaust I took off a car, whatever it might be, right? And he was taking that cylinder away. But now I have to take that cylinder and I have to transport it on a vehicle of some sort.
Like probably a diesel truck.
Diesel truck,
right?
And remember, that cylinder is volume, not weight.
Yeah, not as much weight. It's just taking up a lot of space.
Takes up a lot of space. So really, whether I'm transporting 10 pallets of full cylinders or 10 pallets of empty cylinders, I need the same amount of truck to do that. So I need to transport that now back to the reclaimer. The reclaimer has to take the time and energy to connect to that disposable and then pull that last refrigerant in deep vacuum out of that cylinder and then disconnect and then dispose of it. So I've got this supply chain thing going on of transporting it back and then having to do work on it. And what we don't know, but it's our right to question, is from an environmental standpoint, are we getting an environmental benefit, a net environmental benefit, by pulling out those last potentially 50 grams after we've done all this transporting?
Right.
Or is it kind of a net environmental penalty of having to do all that transporting to get this last 50 grams?
Right, because it's not really just the truck that sends it back, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have to do work on it in your shop.
Yep.
You have to send that back through the supply chain to where you purchase refrigerant from. Yep. And then that has to go back to some warehouse or DC.
Right.
Then has to be gathered up with other bottles, then sent back to a reclaimer. They have to put work into it and electricity into it, right? So there's all that transport, and I guess you'd have to do the calculations for how does EPA do it? The million metric tons of CO2 equivalent when you add up an average of 50 grams of refrigerant multiplied by
Right.
how many millions of cylinders are used in the U.S. every
Right.
year, and
Yeah.
do that calculation versus how much emissions are being put out by a diesel truck and the electricity to reclaim it, and
Yeah, and then the cost, and you get a cost because
it's not being done for free.
Right, because
Right.
this has to happen, and because the scrap metal really isn't worth a whole lot.
Right.
And in reality, the refrigerant isn't worth any more than the cost of extracting it. Somebody's going to pay this bill. And if
Right.
that means that the reclaimer says, I'm happy to take back your cylinders, it'll be $20 a cylinder, and I'll be able to accommodate you. Well, somebody's paying that $20.
Right, and it's
I
gonna
can
be
tell you who
passed
it's going to
through.
be. It's going to be the consumer
gonna be the
through
end.
the shop, through the distributor. So, assuming this gets passed the way it's been proposed, I don't know that it won't, but assuming it does, wouldn't surprise me to see the big box retailers. I don't know if we can say who they are. We're not picking on anyone, but
Right.
it could be an Advance or an O'Reilly's or
Napa or
a Napa, an AutoZone, whoever it is. Come up with a program that basically says we'll take your empties back and we'll drop off a new one.
Right, an
Right.
exchange program
Right.
for your empties, but
Yeah.
not in the same manner as the reusable cylinders that they originally
Correct.
wanted to do.
Right, and we'll just do it that way. So you don't have to drive back to our store to drive it back. It's when our delivery guy comes to deliver you a new cylinder, he'll be happy to take back your empty, and then we'll consolidate the empties and we'll get them shipped back. But at the end of the day, somebody's paying for it.
Right.
So
And I
looks
think
li-
that was part of EPA's argument too, was that, well, the driver is bringing you the refrigerant and they have to go back empty anyway, so
Right.
they can just carry that empty bottle back with them.
Yeah, but we know that the truck that delivered those pallets of refrigerant to the distributor wasn't taking pallets of something from the distributor back.
Right, not necessarily. They may be going on a different
next
job.
door or whatever to go make a pickup or whatever. So
Right.
now they have to take back. So we'll see what happens, but assuming that comes to fruition, then you can expect to have to do something with those empty cylinders.
Right.
Moving forward. And that leads us a little bit to these restrictions on 134A or HFCs. It is HFCs. There's
Right,
HFC
it's not specifically-
allocations and so forth. But in our world, we think of it as 134A.
Right.
One of the reasons they're doing this is because as they restrict 134A or HFC supplies through the allocations, it's kind of this complicated formula, and we've talked about it in the past, that we want to be able to recover as much as possible to be able to reuse and get through that reclamation stream so that we can reuse as much as we can and not have it vent to atmosphere.
Right.
But we're now at a 60% reduction from baseline. And a couple of years ago, when the first 10% reduction happened,
We
I think you and
saw-
I were both shocked, right? We were used to paying like $100 for a 30-pound cylinder.
And all of a sudden it went to like
It's
$390,
$400.
$400, right?
Right. And not exactly sure what the reason. There's a whole bunch of different thoughts on what the reasons were, whether it was people kind of holding stock or because they thought the price might continue to go up. But the price has settled back down a little bit. But we've now got a 40% reduction.
Right.
So we do expect the price to climb again.
Right.
And
we haven't really seen that yet, but that doesn't mean it's not coming.
right.
Right.
But there's a couple of sides of that because we've got some restrictions now. I think January 1st, 2025, thereabouts, passenger car light truck cannot use 134A off the factory
Off the
assembly line.
factory,
here.
right. New production.
Right.
Right.
Now, most of that's already been taken care of because they've been using YF for a long time. But we also have restrictions on medium duty and heavy duty trucks for the use of 134A.
Right. And that'll be starting up. So that's going to be a big change in that sector.
In that sector.
Right.
So that means that they're not going to be consuming 134A.
On the new vehicles.
On the new vehicles, which means that there'll be a little less pressure on the allocation system because the OEs won't be taking that refrigerant for new vehicles over the next couple of years.
Right. So we can sort of, if you want, you can say some of that can come to the aftermarket.
In theory, right.
It might not, like you said before. I mean, they might use it to blend with another refrigerant to make a different product or whatever.
But that's really the big thing is this isn't about 134A. We talk about it in those terms, but it's HFCs. And in, kind of that short version there, somebody is allowed to have 1,000 units of allocation of HFCs, and they can choose to use 1,000 units for 134A, which has a GWP, let's just pick a number and call it 1,430. Or they can use it for 410A, which I don't even know what the GWP of 410A is, but I think it's higher than 1,430.
Yeah.
And so maybe they can only use, get 600 pounds of 410A or 1,000 pounds of 134A. And depending on the price and supply and availability and so forth, they may pick and choose how to use their allocation. So we're going to kind of have to wait and see. But all that fun leads to a couple of SNAP applications.
Right. So we have SNAP applications in now for 3 main refrigerant products that are being proposed as replacements, retrofits, right? So the 90s all over again.
Well, only 2 really apply here. Because if we're talking about the HFC rule,
right,
we're talking about one SNAP application to use 1234YF as a retrofit replacement for 134A.
Right.
In, subject to some guidelines from the EPA.
Right.
Or 456 is another one that's been proposed as a potential retrofit for 134A systems.
Right.
Those are being done specifically because of a concern, and MACS does support this concept anyway, the concern that with the reduction of 134A, we could have price or supply issues. And if we have price or supply issues, people may look to other alternatives like they've seen on YouTube or something that you can buy off the shelf near where the keyboards are, in your local office supply store,
right.
and decide to recharge their system with something that's not approved at all for that application, at least for that vehicle.
Right. So it's kind of like a way of getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
The potential of someone doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Right. By providing some alternatives in the marketplace.
Still some issues to be worked out there. They're not SNAP approved. It's the use conditions that are still being worked out.
Right. Fittings.
Yeah,
right.
That's kind of the big one is fittings. MACS has been a very, very strong supporter of fittings. We remain so.
Right.
That 134A is a dedicated fitting, YF has a dedicated fitting, something else should have a dedicated fitting.
Right.
And so to figure out what those solutions are, those are being worked out. So that covers the cylinders.
Right.
That covers the SNAP applications. Then we get to, and we talked about the use restrictions for light duty passenger cars. So there was one more topic in there, and this one's kind of getting better for us. It's working in our favor. And that was something in the AIM Act that indicated that we would have to reclaim our refrigerant and not recycle our refrigerant.
Right.
And we've worked with the EPA. If you look back at some prior podcasts, you'll find some reference to that. But kind of the latest on this coming out of the MACS training event is that the proposal's out there from the EPA, and they've decided to, at this time, take no action on the automotive space concerning that. So for the moment, we're good. We're going to keep an eye on it, but they recognize the hard work that all of our members and our industry does to recycle refrigerant and get it back into the stream in a usable form, and focus on those folks who haven't been doing that.
Right. And I think we made a good argument. I think we made a good case for it. And it wasn't just MACS alone. It was a lot of our partners from vehicle manufacturers, refrigerant suppliers, tool and equipment providers that...
Even reclaimers.
Even the reclaimers.
Like, we really don't want your automotive refrigerant back because frankly, there's not a whole lot we can do with it, and it's going to be expensive to sell.
Right, and it's a lot of material,
Yeah,
actually. Right. And for that very tiny difference between the purity standard of SAE and the purity standard of ASHRAE,
right.
It's so tiny, and quite frankly, the environmental benefit just isn't there.
Well, because that's really the big deal there is, if you look at it from that environmental standpoint, again, that means that I need to take this and put it into a reclaim cylinder. I need to put it on a truck. I need to ship it away to be ever so slightly purified again.
Right.
So that I could get to buy it back from you and then have it shipped back to me.
Right.
And then use it again.
And we're not talking about empty cylinders here. I
No,
mean, there's
we're
that
talking
argument.
full cylinders at this point. Yeah.
Right. There's that argument that they have, on the other side where, you're going to use diesel fuel, you're going to use gasoline or whatever to transport that empty cylinder, which weighs a few small pounds, whatever the net
right. But
weight
a lot
is,
of volume.
But a lot of volume.
Right.
Versus 30 pounds of refrigerant in a 37-pound bottle being shipped, multiply that by the number of bottles, and that's a lot of weight to move around for that tiny improvement in the purity standard.
And essentially our argument was an unnecessary improvement.
It's unnecessary, right?
The way the rule reads in HVAC, because they operate differently, is that if you're going to transfer ownership of the refrigerant, that it has to be purified to the AHRI 700 standard. Our rule, as we have it, is if you're going to transfer ownership of the refrigerant, it needs to be purified to the SAE 2099 standard.
Right.
And that's really where the difference is. 2099 isn't quite as strict as AHRI 700.
Right.
And
and I think that was to meet the purity standards that we already had in place at the time for recovery machines, because that standard goes back a couple of years, and that's what gives us that little 2%, roughly 98% purity for recycled refrigerant.
But we know that most of the refrigerant comes back that we're
much
pulling out of cars
than
and we're charging in the cars is really very close to that 99.5 number, and some of the difference were things like acidity.
Right.
How much, or moisture or whatever, how much the ASHRAE standard or HRI 700 standard allowed versus how much the SAE 2099 standard allowed. But our position is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We're doing a great job. We would hate to see people recover refrigerant from a vehicle and say, I'm not going to waste the time to send this off. I don't know where it went. It just disappeared.
It just disappeared.
Right? Because you're making me buy new stuff anyway.
Right.
So
I think to that point, we're very thankful that EPA, chose the path that they did, because we think it's definitely the right move for the industry.
Yeah. So we're. So if you want to learn more on that topic, I will actually be appearing with ASE.
Right. You're doing the ASE podcast.
Monthly webinar to talk about this topic. I think it's April 23rd. I think that's when we're doing that. So we're happy to do that. We'll entertain questions there from various folks on this topic. And I know I have a call with the EPA tomorrow. Yeah, I have a call with the EPA tomorrow. And one of the certifying bodies, we've got to talk about some standard stuff and how the EPA interprets it and how SAE interprets it and so forth. So it's a real busy time. I know you have lots going on. Certifications are really kicking here.
Certifications are hot right now. It's leading into summertime, and it always gets busy this time of year. Plus we have spring training going on. And we still have a couple more trade shows coming up. And of course a lot of classes here at MACS. So busy times.
And we don't want to forget that I just saw this on the news the other day, that we've now had 10 consecutive months of excess heat here in the U.S., where the temperatures where the average temperature was some significant amount higher than the average temperature. And so we're expecting a hot summer.
Right.
And hot is good for air conditioning. It really is. One more plug, we're working hard on the on the May-June edition of MACS Action.
Right, and we just published our April MSR.
April MSR is just just going out. And we're on the way to Detroit. You and
Yes, Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday we're there. Well, I'll be there for the week. You'll be there for
36
SAE.
hours.
Yeah, you'll be there for the Interior Climate Control Standards Committee meetings. And then I'm going to stay for, I think, 3 or 4 more days for World Congress.
Yep.
Right. And then hopefully we'll get a couple more video episodes up there, our new MACS Tech Reports videos. Hopefully find some cool stuff in the trade show. And what I'm really looking forward to is the thermal management papers that are presented during the event. So yeah, lots of good information about future ideas, future systems we might see one day. So yeah, hey, I guess
You're a geek.
yeah, some
gonna
people
geek out.
really like that kind of stuff, and others are just
Gotta geek out. Gotta go to Greek town.
Yeah.
And geek out.
So, all right, cool. Well, Peter, thanks for hanging out with me.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or any comments, please post them below. And please subscribe to get notified of future episodes. I'm Steve Schaeber,
And I'm Peter Coll.
and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
This podcast is a production of MACS, the Mobile Air Climate Systems Association. MACS is the nonprofit trade association for the mobile air conditioning industry, representing manufacturers, Tier 1 suppliers, tool and equipment providers, parts distributors, and of course, service shops, owners, and technicians. MACS is a membership-driven organization serving the industry through training, education, advocacy, government relations, standards writing, and EPA Section 609 certification. If you'd like to learn more about MACS, please visit us on our website, www.maxmobileairclimate.org, where you can join MACS as a member. This podcast was produced by me, Steve Schaeber, and hosted by Steve Schaeber and Peter Coll. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give a thumbs up and please subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. Thanks for listening.